You're listening to the Intuitive Souls podcast. I am your host, Erica Russo, and this podcast is designed to educate, inspire, and enlighten. Let's wake up together. Hey guys, and welcome to the show. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. I am glad the universe led you here. I am Erica Russo from SibylAndSarah.com, and I am a spiritual life and business coach. And this podcast is all about bringing you the tools and the education you need to live and manifest a beautiful spiritual path for yourself. So in this episode, I sit down with this amazing sound healer. And guys, when I tell you, when I got off the call with her, I felt like I just went to a sound healing workshop. She drops so much knowledge and so much value into the show, and I am so happy that she came on. Her name is Shania Satar, and all of her information is going to be in the show notes for you. So go ahead and check her out. She actually does virtual sound healing. How cool is that? So definitely check her out. Like I said, so much value, so much value. And I actually started using my little sound bowl because she gives us a little story about how she dove into sound healing. And I have been using my little singing bowl, and yeah, you'll just learn more in the episode. So again, I really hope that you guys enjoy this episode. I hope you guys are enjoying all the episodes. If you are, please go head over to iTunes and leave a review. It lets me know that I'm doing my job, bringing you guys value, bringing you guys what you want to listen to. And I really, truly appreciate it. It helps get this podcast out and gets it to the ears that need to listen to it. So again, I sit down with Shania Satar, and all of her information is in the show notes, and be sure to let me know, go ahead and screenshot you listening and, put it on your Insta stories, tag me. I love seeing that you guys are digging this, and I will see you next week. Shanila, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Thanks for having me. Yes, I'm Shanila. I'm based in Los Angeles, and I'm a sound alchemist. And I help people just get into the flow of their lives, just getting them out of their own ways using the power of sound. So I use crystal bowls, gongs, meditation techniques that help people kind of unlock and unrelease a lot of the blockages that we hold on into our body. So I help alleviate that.
That's amazing. So basically, is sound healing kind of like energetic healing, like aura healing kind of?
So sound healing is done in something that's called a sound bath. And I promise that there's no water involved in a sound bath. Basically, it's a laying down experience. If you've never experienced it, it's basically you're laying down or you're in a seated position and different sounds are playing around you. So the particular sounds I use are from crystal quartz singing bowls. They're 432 hertz crystal quartz singing bowls. And 432 hertz is a really special frequency. It's known as the miracle tone. And it's known like that is because we find this frequency in our body, we find it in nature, we find it in frequency of plants, and it's a really powerful frequency that helps realign cells in our body that might be vibrating a little bit out of sync. So everything in us is vibrating, like cells, molecules, all the ionic exchanges that we're going through. That's naturally happening always, but certain frequencies can help align things that are vibrating too fast back down to center, and things that are vibrating too slow, it helps kind of pick it back up, ask it to kick back in, and rebalance and realign itself. And sound bath basically gets you to the spot called theta state. And theta is this brainwave where we find deep meditation. So we have different waking states, like we have alpha state and beta state and delta state. And just depending on what we're doing in the day, we're experiencing a different state. Like when we're sleeping, we have a certain state. When we're awake, we have a certain state. When we're thinking a lot, we have a certain state. When we're dreaming, we have a certain state. So theta is where you can get to through meditation. And for some of us, like myself, who has a hard time kind of keeping my mind quiet or you have a hard time sitting still, kind of doing the traditional meditation, I call this the cheater's way to meditate. You get the same benefits of meditation. You still get to the theta state and get the benefits of meditation, like better mood, better energy, less stress, less anxiety, less depression, better sleep, and all that good stuff. You still get all those benefits. So that's sound healing in a nutshell. There's plenty of ways to do it, but that's just my practice of this.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I actually had a couple months ago. It wasn't like a full-blown session, but I did have like a mini session, and it was such an amazing experience. Like it really
awesome.
was. She did the glass singing bowls, but then she also did the tuning forks.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And
what did you experience?
Honestly, she put the tuning fork on my knee, right? And all of a sudden, I literally almost felt like a bubble pop.
Yes.
Like it was like an energetic blockage or something like that. But it is it's such a cool experience. It really is, especially if you're into like the energy healing, if you've done Reiki or something like that. I really highly suggest checking out sound healing, because it's a very different experience than anything else that I've ever, any sort of healing modality that I've ever done.
Yeah, and I would say that, sound healing falls on this kind of spectrum. There's this one end of it that has this super hyper science explanation of how these sound frequencies and vibrations are interacting with our body, like on the water of our body, on the molecules and the byproducts of that, like stress, anxiety, all of the insomnia. It has a really hyper science explanation. But on the other end of it, there's this like completely woo explanation that by definition, you don't really have an explanation for. And the woo is basically that sometimes you can have these energetic releases from your body that you're collecting, and it's harnessing in these like really dense pockets. So what can happen during sound healing is that you feel like a burning sensation, or you feel some heat energy moving through your body, and all of a sudden there's like a pop, like a release or some kind of buzz or tingle, and you feel this like euphoria of things just flowing through your body in places that you didn't even know that you needed energy to, or that you were holding physical energy from, even just subconsciously. So there's this like whole woo component of it that I don't know why people can turn into a giraffe and taste colors and fly off into deep space. There's like such a variety of experiences from this, but it's also this like huge emotional release too, because we know that in our day-to-day lives that we hold emotions in our body. Like in our everyday language, we have language to say that we have a burden on our shoulders, or a weight on our back, or a frog in our throat, or heaviness in our heart. We use words to describe the fact that we hold emotion physiologically in our body. So a lot of times what happens is that if you imagine yourself as a stream of water, like I'm sitting on a boat right now and I'm looking at water. So this is why I'm using water now. But if you imagine a stream of water just flowing freely, and a big tree, because of a storm or something happens, a big tree falls into the center of this river, that water gets blocked. Right? So the water now has to figure out a way to go around the tree, go under the tree, maybe has to accumulate and go over the tree. So this tree represents something big that happens in our life, something traumatic, sometimes like a transitional thing. And sometimes it's not even like a big thing that happens. It's just accumulation of different things that have happened. And we start to hold on to it in our physical body. So we start to block our flows in our body. So we start to feel this pain on our shoulders. It feels like a burden on our shoulders. We start to carry grief in our lower back. We start to have when we feel like our power is getting taken away. We feel that in our stomach. You get that gut instinct. You feel like your stomach just went to the pit. You say you feel like it went to the pit of your stomach. We use that kind of language to describe that. Sometimes we have all of these blocks. And what sound does is energetically release a lot of these blockages that we have. So it's working on you on the cellular level. It's asking your body to pick up these processes that are sometimes really stagnant. Like we have our nervous system that's working for us. And what we tend to experience a lot of times is a stagnation of of our nervous system, our energy sensors or our chakras, depending on, how we want to talk about it. So sometimes these blocks, this tree, metaphorical tree, sits right on top of a major part of our system. So instead of being in flow and instead of being in this like complete, peaceful stream of water, we experience all this turmoil. So what sound does is actually get to these energetic places where we're holding on to these big blocks. Sometimes it's subconscious. We don't actually know that we're holding on to it. We usually don't actually know that we're holding on to it. So sometimes during sun baths, you'll feel this like collection of energy coming to a spot in your body that you were so used to carrying some kind of weight. For women, it tends to be at the lower back or kind of at the back of the neck and the shoulder area. And you'll feel this like bubbling. You'll feel this like tingling, bubbling, and then all of a sudden a big release and a flood of happiness hormones just like flows through you. And and so during that time, it could be really emotional because a lot of times, like when you release blocks that are physically sitting in your body, it releases a lot of kind of energetic information that it's holding on to too. Like we hold on to a lot of like emotions and nostalgic thoughts and behaviors and patterns like in our body, and we don't necessarily have a scientific way to measure that, but we know that we carry weight on our shoulders, burden on our back. We sometimes feel like we can't speak up because we're blocked up at our throat, and it can show up in different ways, like thyroid issues. It can show up as inflammation of the cells, that can show up like anxiety, that can show up like stress, that can show up like depression, that can show up in a lot of different ways that we kind of sometimes just dismiss it to chemical imbalances. But it can also have a lot of implications on just being in the state of flow. And that's why sound healing can just be like such a passive way to receive all these blessings, because all you really have to do is lay down. You don't have to do anything else except lay down, surrender, just be open to it. And I'll tell you that sometimes, people will come to a sound bath, come to a session, and their eyes are rolling so far into the back of their head because it's so woo-woo, like how am I going to get healed through sound and what are these crystals and blah, blah, blah. And my background is as a scientist, so I definitely came into this world with my eyes rolled at the back of my head, just thinking like, okay, whatever, I'll just give this a go. But honestly, it's one of these things that are experiential. You have to experience it. You have to allow yourself to kind of just surrender and be open to the experience and just watch the benefits take over you.
Yeah, I love that you said like, yeah, I came into this like rolling my eyes like a scientist, because that's exactly how I came
exactly
to like, my spiritual, my spiritual woo practice was like, I am very logical with everything that I do. So when I, the crystals and the chakras and stuff like that, I need evidence. If I'm going to talk about it, if I'm going to do this podcast, I need to know that this stuff is actually legit. You know what I mean? So, and that's such a good way, because like the way you're explaining this, it's like, okay, she kind of knows what she's talking about. Like, this is good. Like, she's making a lot of sense right now, which you are. And it really comes down to like, everything is energy. Everything in this universe is energy. You know what I mean? We're made up of energy. So, and even our thoughts are made up of energy. Our heartbreaks are made up of energy. So we have to be aware of that. So if you're holding on to that heartbreak from years ago or a traumatic child, that's energetic buildup, right? And basically what sound is doing is that it's because it's such a high frequency, it allows it to get out of you.
And
so it really makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and exactly what you're saying, this like need for this kind of more logical, systematic explanation. And I try to, keep my mind open about like where this kind of work falls in the spectrum, because there are all these explanations that we can like calculate, measure, and talk about the ionic exchange and whatever. We can talk about it like that, but then there's some really spiritual, unexplainable things that are happening at the same time. And it's like, it's a disservice to be able to even try to put those into words that are so black and white and so binary, because this is such like a spectrum experience. That's what I kind of love about it, because you can take from it what it is. Like if you need that kind of more sciencey explanation, we can come up with it. It exists. There's evidence for that. But if you're just fine floating off into space and then, you know, like getting downloads from your ancestors and now you know like your purpose in life, okay, that's cool. I don't know how to get you there like very systematically and logically, but that's where it is, and that's cool too.
Right, exactly. So what exactly drew you to sound healing, and how did you come to recognize that this is like a legitimate form of healing?
Yeah, so honestly, it just came from my own evidence of the practice. So a couple of years ago, when I was first discovering this, I was at a music festival in California, and I just saw these bunch of people like in a tent, and people were laying down, and people were playing gongs and crystal bowls and all doing all the woo woo, and I was just like honestly rolling my eyes. But I did see people laying down, and I'm like, okay, well, I don't ever turn down a nap, so I'm down to go nap, you know. So I went and just laid down, and I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what to expect. I had no preconceived notion or like a hesitation around it. I was like, okay, cool. I'm just gonna go lay down. And I actually caught just the last bit of this sound bath, and it was one of these ones that you could go in and out, but I just caught the last bit, and it was probably like 10-15 minutes long. And it honestly was the first time in my life that I experienced absolute freaking silence in my head. Like I had no idea what it was to experience silence in my head. And it was during a time where I was experiencing a lot of crap. Like I was experiencing people passing away in my family. My grandfather had just passed away. I had been leaving a long-term relationship. I was exiting a business that I had, and all this stuff was just so much transitions. And I was in this job that was making me really anxious all the time. A lot of responsibilities fell on my shoulder, and I just had a really busy head. Like I would always have lists. I would always like need to check my email, always like busy thinking process. Like, and I never even thought of myself that I could just sit down and like, you know, meditate. Cause you know, if you ask the average person, like what it looks like to meditate, it's like, oh, you're so peaceful and you're like on a hilltop somewhere and you're like oming and you're also zen out and nothing bothers you. But that's like the opposite of what it is.
Right.
Like meditation is like so busy, you know, it's so busy in your head. And that was the first time I experienced just like complete silence. And honestly, I just didn't think about it until like I experienced a couple of weeks later. I experienced just really even more high stress. And I went to this Tibetan shop in like Oakland, California. In Oakland, there's a little Tibetan shop, and I bought this little bowl, just like a little Tibetan bowl. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to ding this because I don't know what the science or whatever it is. And like I said, I was working in science, so I do require a lot of like sciencey explanations for things. But this was probably one of the things in my life where I'm just like, I'm just going to buy this bowl because it makes me feel happy and whatever. So in the morning, I would just ding it a couple of times, and it would chill me out like to no other. Just a few seconds of dinging, I would ding this bowl, like a little Tibetan bowl, and then I would hold it up to my head and just move it around my head. And I would take probably like not more than like 45 seconds to do this activity. At that time, I didn't want to put aside time for like a practice, like a meditation practice. It seemed like such a burden and like a huge deal and time commitment for me. So I didn't even like think about that. I just, dinged this little bowl, and I started to notice that my days would go a lot better. I was a lot more chilled out. I would feel silence in my head. I would feel just a little bit more calm. So then I started to do it at nighttime before I would go to bed, and I would do this for about like 1 or 2 minutes. And I noticed that this insomnia that I had my entire life, I started to go to sleep like pretty fast, and I started to have really good sleep, and I started to be able to wake up on time and like feel that like my body was naturally rested. So at this time, I still didn't know like what frequency this is, what note it is, how the corresponding is, like what entrainment is happening in my brain. I hadn't researched any of that. I'm just like, okay, I'm just dinging this bowl. It works for me. I believe it. Okay, cool. And then it just turned out that, one day I quit my job, and then I started to do sound healing full time. And that's when I learned like everything. There's so much more like brain sciences and neuroscience involved in this entrainment process. it's not just a random bunch of bowls and gongs playing. The frequencies and vibrations are going to do its job regardless, but there is a really specific way to entrain someone's brain, entrain someone's body processes, and allow them to get to the state of deep healing and then bring them out of that so that this effect can be long term. There's a very specific process for that. And once I started to learn about this, it became so clear to me that our ancestors and our every culture, we've always had sound healing. Everything that we've ever had has sound healing. Like, we've been chanting for how long? We have gospels at church. We sing in religion. We sing for joy. We know that the sounds and vibrations that we produce from our own body has a natural capacity to heal. And so a lot of these vibrations, they do actually pretty cool studies. They do studies on water molecules. And this is really relevant because if you think about the fact that we're made of 70% plus water, we're composed of 70% plus water. So certain molecules, certain frequencies, when you play them to water molecules and you flash freeze them, they make perfect mandalas. They make perfect mandala shapes. Like, the molecules are perfect harmony. They're perfect geometric shapes. And certain frequencies, when you play to water molecules and you flash freeze them, they're completely dissonant. So imagine the implication, the sounds and frequencies, the vibrations that we're absorbing on the day-to-day. Even when you're saying mean stuff to other people, how much of it has an implications of the water that is in your body and the harmony it can have based on the frequency it absorbed. And another cool example is these like tree studies these kids did at a school where they had these two identical trees, and one tree they said really mean things to for the whole week, and another tree they said really nice words. They said words of affirmation. They said, I love you, you're amazing. They said really kind things to this tree, and guess what? The tree that you were saying nice things to was thriving. The other one started to brown. The leaves started to come out. It was sad, you know. So these vibrations, we actually we emit them from our own mouths. We emit them from our own body. So we have this whole like vessel of power that we carry just from the tone of our voice. And imagine these external things like from crystal bowls, from tuning forks, from gongs that are very specifically tuned, how we can laser focus on some of the ailments that we face in our day-to-day. Like, who knew that you could resolve sleep problems or you could quiet a mind just by listening to some frequencies? Like, these frequencies your brain literally can't make sense of. Like, some of them sound pretty annoying, but it can be just because your body is acclimating back to that equilibrium state. And a lot of these frequencies your brain can't make sense of. So it has to stop talking. It has to shut up. And that's the beautiful thing. Like, you don't, at a certain point, you don't have a choice.
Yeah, no, totally. Now let's get back to that singing bowl, right? Because I got myself a little singing bowl and I cannot for the life of me play it. I can't play it. You know how hard it is to do it. You know what I mean? Like, go around the singing bowl. So I just ding it.
Yeah.
But, like, that's so interesting that you said that you just ding it in the morning and then you started dinging it at night and it helped you sleep. And now I'm like, I have to start doing that. I'm just so curious.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I just, you have all the tools. Like, I'm sure anyone who's listening to this podcast has these things laying around. You know what I mean? They have a singing bowl, or, you know, they can go buy themselves a singing bowl. And even just starting that, you know what I mean? Just dinging in the morning and dinging at night and seeing if there's any benefit for them. You know, that's definitely incorporate sound healing into your everyday life.
And I will say that, you know, that bowl is an external thing. You have a voice that you can always use. You can always attune to the voice that you have. So there are certain mantras, and mantras are just sayings that help activate different chakras in your body. And so you can pick a certain sound that you really like Om is a really common one because it activates all your chakras, and it's one that's easy to remember. But you can pick like any freaking sound that you like. You can say like ah or why or how, whatever it is that you love. But you can, if you just, without the judgment of how you sound in your voice or how like what pitch or what tone or what frequency are you humming at. It doesn't freaking matter. You just pick one and you just chant that for 15 minutes each. You just go, you can just pick whichever one and you'll start to notice something happening to your body. That's like sound healing, like from you. That's coming from you, not from a bowl, not from a fork, not from whatever else. That is like coming from the vibration of you. And and look across cultures. Like why do monks chant so much? Why do like religions chant so much? Why do cultures chant so much? Or why do they have these certain practices that bring them to these states of euphoria? It's because when you're chanting, when you're doing any kind of like vocalization or vocal exercise, your brain literally doesn't have a chance to think about your to-do list. Like that's just like the one reason you can convince me, like if you have a hard time, just sitting, closing your eyes, and like one thought comes to your head and you follow it down the rabbit hole, and then 15 minutes later you're like more anxious than you started. That's like the typical experience of like a new meditator, right? But if you're just saying a sound, your brain doesn't have the opportunity to think about anything else except the sound that you're making for this really literally 15 seconds of your life, right? And you start that over again, another 15, start that over again, another 15. And before you know that, you've been there for 5 minutes. And it's not about judgment of like what tone you were, what vibrations you were, whatever. Like there's no way to do it wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so if you can't play the bowl, that's cool. Just like chant. Another easy way to incorporate sound healing to your daily life is to just listen to the music. Just listen to music that you like, right? Like music has so much nostalgic memories for us. It can induce feelings. It can bring back emotions, back memories. So pick something that you want to feel and listen to something that evokes that feeling. And that doesn't require you to do anything at all. Just close your eyes, just play it in your headphones and that's it. Just float away.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. There's so many people that struggle with just, meditation, like mindful meditation. I want to say words, focus on your breath, focus on your breath, focus on your breath. But, using sound as a different technique, you're still getting into that theta state. You're still getting in, you know what I mean? You're still getting into that state of calm by sound. So this is definitely, sound healing, chanting, mantras, whatever the case may be. If you're not a meditator, if meditating's not your thing, try sound healing,
Yeah.
Just go ahead and lock yourself in a room and chant.
Yeah. And there's not that much excuse for not doing it. It's not like it's going to be this whole time consuming activity or you need all these resources and, like there's no barrier to entry to that. You just hum. If you don't want to open your mouth, you can hum. Another beautiful thing this simple action is doing to our bodies is that, well, we used to think that our neurotransmitters were only in our brain, so we called them neurotransmitters. But now we know we actually have neurotransmitters in our stomach. We have neurotransmitters that produce our happiness chemicals, our happiness hormones like serotonin and dopamine, and even like in traces of oxytocin. We produce that in our stomach. So because us as a society, we're typically used to just like breathing from like our neck up. Like when you take a deep breath, you go, and you just breathe right into your chest. You don't really breathe into your belly. So what you do when you hum, you're actually kind of pumping and vibrating these chemicals, these feel-good happiness chemicals that you're naturally producing in your body, allowing it to wake up because it's there. Sometimes we just don't know how to access it because, we don't breathe properly or we don't, eat the proper foods that activate it. So they're there, but they're just not activated. So something like that simple vibration wakes up these chemicals, just like that micro vibration, allowing that water to get moved just a little bit, wakes up these chemicals, and then you have this flood of better feelings. You have a more ecstatic experience because you have serotonin to feel happier. You have your dopamine to feel happier.
Oh, yes. Yes. Oh, I love how you bring the science into this. I love that you're bringing the science into this. So
Awesome.
Last question. What are some symptoms or things that you've seen be cured by sound healing?
Yeah, I mean, I tread lightly to make any kind of claims as to like this cures
Right.
X, Y, and Z
Yeah, I
thing.
didn't know how to like word it, but like what have you seen where sound healing benefited, the state
Yeah.
of the symptom?
Yeah. So the number one thing is sleep. It is just a better sleep experience. And it's because we're able to get to this relaxing theta state that allows us to receive all the beautiful benefits from that. So I would say sleep is the number one like cure or helpful benefit from sound healing. Number two, I would say is a close one, is a deepen of airplane, pardon.
Oh, it's okay.
I would say is a deepened spiritual connection to oneself. Because what can happen is because we're releasing so much emotions from our body, it can allow ourselves to just become a little bit closer to ourselves and a little bit nicer to ourselves. And that seems like such a like bizarre like symptom it cures, but honestly, I would say that's like one of the biggest benefits from anybody walking out of a sound bath. It just doesn't become about anybody else except for you giving yourself time to experience self-care, some love, experience these flood of happiness hormones, and allowing yourself to just relax and rejuvenate. And the third thing, I would say it has shown to lower anxiety. I think because of the combination of the first two components, better sleep and a better connection to yourself, you're just a little bit more in tune with the natural flow of things. So it takes you away from like the worry of things. And I don't mean like chemical based anxiety. I mean just the worry, the day-to-day worry of like the busy mind, the overactive mind, the hyper conscious, like the hyper worrisome person that has become kind of like the average experience of anything. So lowering that has been just like a really beautiful experience. And the more we reduce a lot of these symptoms, the better we can flow into our natural strengths and, just thrive, just go play, just thrive and be in the flow of things.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So guys, if you haven't checked out sound healing, if you haven't tried anything like sound healing, I really recommend it. Like I said, I have only gotten like a mini session done and I saw some pretty intense effects, like definitely. So Shanila, thank you so much for coming on the show and thank you so much for bringing the science into this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I really love that you were just able to just break everything down and like just say exactly what the benefits are because it's just you know what I mean? Like some people just
I know
like
what you mean.
their head, you know what I mean? Like they just shake their head at the woo and crystals and everything like that. And it's like, no, but there's actually science behind it, So,
yeah.
and you have to bring that. So Shanila, thanks again for coming on.
Thank you so much.